May I have an email from somebody in the district?
It's Warriors.
Just Warriors?
Yes.
No capital?
No, I think the W's capital.
I'll
Try it. Is it all lowercase?
I think it's all over.
Good.
It is busy.
It is.
You know, I have it written down, but I don't have a little out there.
I have it in my phone.
I'm not, we're on.
Back in June. I'd say I remember June.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that spell is.
What is it? Warriors?
Yeah, all lowercase.
Somebody emailed me, is Bob serving chili for the board meeting in January?
I don't know. I'll ask.
You try leaving your mic on the whole meeting this time.
Okay, thanks for asking.
Just a suggestion.
I don't know if it was a suggestion.
I think he was telling you that.
Okay. We will call this meeting to order at 6:01. Oh, we gotta do a roll call. Sorry. I like that.
Ready?
Yeah.
Brett Eby.
Yep.
Bob Sullivan.
Yes.
Mike Hancock.
Yes.
Di Pfeiffer.
Yes.
Alex Shada.
Yes.
Renee Philmeyer.
Yes.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's a copy of the Open Meetings Act on the wall. Please feel free to review. We do have the agenda as presented. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Chris?
Mike.
Yes.
Di.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Renee.
Yes.
Brett.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Okay, including your packet of the minutes from our last meeting in November. Any changes, add amendments that you need to make? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the November meeting?
So moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Chris?
Mike.
Yes.
Di.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Renee.
Yes.
Brett.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
All the claims are attached. There's non-EV lawn service claim in there, and I didn't see any other ones. I did review those this morning. Any questions about claims?
What is the qualified cap? Please remind me.
You wanna
That-
take that?
Yeah, I can. It's regular payment, so use the qualified cap fund to do the PLC when that was billed. And it's on a regular schedule that gets paid in June and December,
Remind me when I need
2034-ish. I can look up the exact date, but it's early 2030s.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion to approve?
Also move.
Second.
Any further discussion? Chris?
Bob.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Di.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Renee.
Yes.
Brett.
Yes. Moving on to informational items. As every month, there's a treasurer's report. Any questions about any of those said funds for Brandon or Chris? On to 4.2 policy review. Skipping down to 4.3 administrative reports. All reports were attached. And just a quick reminder, if you ever need any direct questions for said administrators, 9 o'clock Monday morning, you can request that they show up tonight.
This isn't necessarily a question for one of them, but it's just a general thought that popped in my head. When they switched, the elementary switched to new reading and math?
new ELA as of
Okay.
last year.
Last year, yeah.
Mhm.
I know there was a lot of angst,
Mhm.
might be the right word, and it seems like they've all adjusted quite well.
It's a really good program. I think the kids are doing far above and beyond what probably we even thought they were capable of. Doesn't make it a perfect program by any stretch. Still some modifications that need to be made, but I think on the whole, it was absolutely worth the change. Josh, you got anything to add? Yeah. You would just pass that to him.
Oh, here.
Give it here.
Here, this one work?
Sorry, yes. I think generally, anytime there's a change in materials or structures, programs, there's a little bit of an acclimation period. Usually, like research would say that there's generally what's called an implementation dip that occurs with that. Anytime you start something new, productivity or results may take a slight nose dive. We generally in this district we don't see that, which is fairly unique given my experience in other districts, larger districts. You generally see some of those things. I would credit that to the staff, just their commitment to the process and the close-knit nature that they have internally that helps some of those things not happen. Also, the more we get into situations like that or just implementation piece, we can start to look at things with a little finer tooth comb and maybe placing more emphasis in one area and removing some undue burdens, or something that maybe doesn't have the impact that we want it to have. We can start to take some of those things out, whether they're routines or structures or whatnot. So just be more efficient and more focused on the things that are more important.
I'm just curious, I know when Mr. Kreifel was here, when he expressed that he was recognizing some of the staff's, I don't know, his frustrations weren't the right word. They were anxious and nervous, and he recognized, I know he was spending a lot of time in classrooms to give them breaks. It seems like it's gone well since then.
I think it was more stressors.
Stress,
Because I talked to many staff members. Not one of them, even last year, said this was a bad thing.
Good.
They just said it is hard right now as they're trying to implement. So I've heard nothing but good things.
Good.
I just want Josh to lead into his report. Go ahead, Josh.
You're up.
This is all in the packet as well, but I just wanted to put it up so we had a visual here. So annually, we obviously we collect information from an achievement standpoint, generally math, reading, and science. These are MAP, measures of academic progress is the acronym for MAP. Something that's been, oh gosh, in the district for well before my time, but it's a pretty standard achievement academic piece that we're looking, that we would look at as we're collecting information here. So you'll see with this particular assessment, it's structured in a way that it's adaptive. So if a student answers a question correctly, the questions get more challenging. If they answer a question incorrectly, it backs off on the level of rigor. So when those types of things happen, this type of assessment in general is designed to, in its perfect world, have kids answer 50% of the questions correct, so that it really truly figures out what's their instructional level. So 50th percentile is what would be considered like the national norm. When you look at our achievement numbers here, and you just, I won't go through any of them specifically, but when you look at them across the board, they far exceed that 50th percentile. You will see in all of those areas some sort of a dip, especially in math and reading during that COVID year, in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, etc. However, majority of those have rebounded substantially, and some have even exceeded those achievement percentiles from before COVID. With these, the chart is more program, so you're going to see, each year those specific students that were in that grade. And then always I like to include just a cohort chart at the bottom. So if you follow those diagonals, those would, relatively speaking, be similar students, similar groups of students. One thing to note, just for your knowledge, is math. There's a significant change between the 5th grade version and the 6th grade version. There's a lot of, the 6th grade version is 612 or 611. It's more of a high school, it gets into those more high school concepts. So students would be exposed to more geometry type questions generally than they would ever see in 2nd through 5th grade. So when we generally see a pretty significant dip when students get into 6th grade in the fall, that first time they take it, and that's if you would look at their standards, the NWA map standards across, that's just something you'll see. So it's just something that we are aware of, but again, I think our students fare much better than the norm. Reading down here, again, very, very solid when you look across, 3rd through 8th grade, where how our students are performing. And then again, a cohort chart, and then science as well.
I think one thing to keep in mind with this, no different than the ACT, this is a snapshot. While it's multiple snapshots within a year, it's a given day that kids are taking a test that give us data. It's not the only point of data that's used in decision-making processes when it comes to curriculum, when it comes to instructional methods. We're using classroom information, we're using map information, anything we can get our hands on, we're going to use.
Absolutely. Down below, you'll see information that's been shared in the past, but I'll showcase this, I think, in a little bit different fashion. So I'm going to come right down here. Maybe 2 years ago, the World Herald, or maybe it was last year, the World Herald always runs a comparison report. I don't think I saw it this year, maybe it hasn't come out yet. Generally, World Herald Journal Star will report on local districts or area districts in terms of ACT scores. So they chose last year to do a 2018-19, so pre-pandemic, if you would, and then a 21-22. I went ahead and I shared that with the board last year, and I went ahead and added 22-23 scores to that same report from last year. So what you'll see here is I tweaked this one a little bit, and I'll show you another one that was more representative of last year's in a second. But you'll see the 18.3, Wahoo obviously there, 18.3 in English Language Arts, 18.7, 19. So you see trending up. The color coding, the green or the, I don't know if that's like an orangish color, right? So yellow would mean kind of regression, if, even if negligible, a regression, and then green would be a positive. So you'll see a lot of green in our chart. And then also on that same piece here. So these would all be similar sized school districts in terms of, not necessarily geographic, but just in terms of size of population. The Department of Ed has a tool that puts together things for, just similar peers is what they call it, and these would be a lot of the schools that you would find there. So when you look at that, our 11th grade students from last year would have ranked number 1 in math, number 1 in science, and 5th in English Language Arts across those schools that you see listed there. The bolded schools are our conference schools as well, conference affiliation. On that same note, I'm going to jump into another one while we're already talking about this. This is the same chart, but with those more metro area schools that you might see. So you'll see Papillion, La Vista, and your Elkhorn and Gretna's and some other districts on there as well. When you look at this comparison, Wahoo Public Schools would rank number 6 in ELA, number 2 in math, and number 2 in science across those districts as well. So some really good things going on there. Obviously, the challenge always is sustaining, some of those things, and just making sure that our programs align to not only give, students a great opportunity to, post-secondary to, pursue a 2-year, 4-year degree or whatever career passion that they may have. Any comments or questions about those parks? Sorry, lots of stuff here. So again, all of this is in the packet, and the following that I'm pulling from here was a news brief communication that was sent out to all parents on December, I believe it was December 5th, but went out through School Messenger, and I try to leave my name on there as a reply when I send those types of things in case parents would like to, get in touch with me or say something. There was at least one who was like, hey, this is excellent news, so thanks for sharing. But that is an option for families if they wanted to respond. That comes directly to me, and I see that. So our 22-23, these are what are called the AQuest classifications. The district moved from great to excellent. If you'll remember, we were excellent for multiple years. There's within the system that determines excellent, great, good, needs improvement, those types of things. There's a system that calculates all kinds of things from graduation rate to chronic absenteeism to achievement, growth and achievement, and then just scores. So all of those things factor into that. So the district was moved from great to excellent. The middle school also earned a classification of excellent. And then Wahoo Elementary and High School maintain their classifications of great. You'll see percentages of schools there that earn the same classifications around the state. And then on Wednesday of this week, I should find out how many districts that would be. It's generally a pretty small number of districts out of the 244. It's generally a pretty small number that earn that excellent distinction. So that's where we're at there. And then,
Just a quick question on that. Do we know
Yeah.
what's holding us out of the excellent category at the high school and elementary level?
yeah, so I could show you specifically, but so generally the growth, there's a formula that's used to determine the excellent rate. You have to meet certain criteria within each of those domains. I'm going to tell you, it's super hard to explain, and some people south also don't understand it either. It's not a very interpretable system. It's very challenging to understand. However, when you look at some of the growth or achievement factors were causes for keeping them out, even though the scores were really good. They just don't meet whatever that criteria is. So for like the growth element, it establishes whatever the expected growth percentage would be over that time. So if you met it 1 year and were above and beyond, you don't get additional credit for continuing to go above and beyond if you met it early. So they set the growth expectation for down the road. So some of those things could get in the way in terms of that system. It's kind of interesting.
So 2 of them got great, one got an excellent, we got an overall excellent.
So
The numbers, guys, so that's 2
yeah,
grades and one.
so they combine some of the information as a district. So some of the information they would put all together and validate it that way as a district piece. And then one of the issues, I guess, that some of our groups are taking with that is when you look at, from a statistical standpoint, some of the information right now at the elementary, middle school, or high school is being combined into one group, one pot, even though those are 3 very uniquely different groups. So something like chronic absenteeism, which is a student who is absent for more than 10% of the time that they're enrolled. So if you have a student in the high school who is, comes to us in the summer and submits enrollment paperwork, and technically they become ours at that point. If they show up, maybe they show up for 1 day or half a day, or they don't show up for that first day, and they're gone for 10 days and they never come to us and they move back to a home district, that person counts against us as chronically absent, even though they didn't ever come to us. So there's some things like that within the system that I know other districts are working through, how to maybe look at what's the best way to, work through situations like that. But, so chronic absenteeism is lumped into one group. So all 3 building levels are under one group as chronically absent. Whereas you would assume, right, I assume our attendance rates at the elementary are much better than they are as students get to middle school and high school, especially if they're in activity. The other things are commanding of their time. So it's interesting, that they combine both of those, all of those groups together. But I know that they're working on the formulas and trying to make sure that some of those things are a little bit more easy to understand for people. But that's one part. So the excellent, great, good, opportunity, needs improvement are the 4. I think, now I might have misspoke if they renamed they keep changing the names to make them sound different, but it still really means the same thing. And then within that, underneath of the classifications are what are called designations. So this is really an area where we pay close attention. Designations would be differences in targeted or subgroup populations. So students that might have learning disability, or students that have maybe a language difficulty, those subgroups of students or categories of students also are compared against the greater average of students who would not be in that category. So if the differences between those groups is large, then there's designations then that are placed on the individual buildings. So those are, if you've heard of CSI or Comprehensive Support, CSI, ATSI, and TSI are those categories. We do not have any schools in the district that have any subgroup variances that are qualifying or that would fit under any of those designations. So when we look at that, that means that all students generally then are performing well. There's not large differences between groups of students, whether free and reduced lunch or special education or not. So super positive there. State assessment information here, this is all compiled 3rd through 8th grade, you'll see, and then the state averages are there, again, well above state average in both math, ELA, and science, and those, again, 3rd through 8th. Yep, and then I've already shared this information, so. But this is what went out to our families. It'll also be posted on Facebook and sent out through Twitter and those types of things on the website. So.
Other questions for Josh? Thank you, Josh. Rest of the reports are there. Brandon.
Just a few things here quickly. Stance is an organization that we're a part of. It's, I think, 19 districts at this point, similar sized. Waverly, Norris, us, Fairbury, we've been a part of for some time. Essentially, it's a group of superintendents that pay attention to the legislature, what's going on, function without a paid lobbyist. We communicate with legislators on key issues. We testify. We do lots of different things. On January 11th, we had a luncheon with some of our senators in which superintendent and a board member are invited to attend. If anybody would really like to attend with me, I can take one board member. Otherwise, I'll start asking around. So let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. It's not terribly formal, but it is a chance to communicate directly with lawmakers as we go into session. Speaking of legislation, there's some key points. While we don't know what's going to come up in the next session, we obviously hear rumblings of what could possibly pop up. Some things that I have listed there: firearms in schools, having armed, not SROs, but it could be a teacher, it could be a security officer, not necessarily law enforcement. Very unclear about what all that would entail when it comes to training, certification, anything else, but that is going to be a push this session, it looks like. Funding mechanisms for education come up on a yearly basis. I don't anticipate this to be any different, specifically money going into public education. I do think there'll be another something with private school financial support, with the scholarship incentive possibly going to the ballot and not knowing where that is. There's anticipated to be other bills that are going to pop up. Superintendent pay, superintendent transparency is probably going to come back up. The last one is going to be a lot of conversation around the EPIC tax. Have you guys heard of the EPIC tax? Essentially what it does is it dissolves all taxes, income tax, property tax, and you basically get a sales tax or a use tax in order to subsidize all services that are coming in. I will speak for me, I don't see how that ends well. The money is going to have to come from somewhere in order to support some of the services, a lot of the services that are provided. So one of the examples that was used was, instead of, you know, your income tax, your property tax, you're going to go to buy a car and you're going to have a 25 to 30% sales tax on it, because they still have to get that money somewhere. And so you have businesses and retailers and some of those organizations that are really concerned about it, because it could directly impact how they continue to provide for the consumer. EPIC tax, there's consumption basically. Yeah. It's working towards the ballot. I don't know if it will get there or not, but if it does, there's a lot of concern that it'll pass, because it's an easy communication of, hey, we'll repeal property tax and income tax if you vote yes. And then trying to educate on the other side of how this potentially negatively impacts people becomes a lot more difficult. So it'll be something to pay attention to as the session gets going. I will continue to report out to you guys on a monthly basis as things come up in board meetings. I tend to try to stick to big topics, education-based. If there's something else you want to know about or want me to pay attention to, please let me know. Negotiations, the negotiations committee might report something out. I would just say it's tentatively wrapped up at this point. I will let them talk further if there's other things to add. The last thing is professional services. Had a conversation with KSB, the school attorneys, and talking about professional services and how those are selected, what processes we need to go through, some of those pieces. Talked about what services need to be bid out, or an RFP, or those sorts of things. That's something the board is going to have to decide going forward. I do think it's in the best interest, and I've talked to Brett and I've talked to KSB, I do think it's in the best interest that we bid out the lawn service, lawn care for next growing season. And specifically, it comes from statute and our own policy, with it being directly related to a board member. If it weren't directly impacting a board member, there's not as many layers that you have to go through. That was the recommendation that I got from KSB. Does not need to be an action item tonight. What I would ask is if you guys, and I'll let Brett say anything he's got to say, but if you guys can just give me direction saying, yes, can you put an RFP together? And I would anticipate in January we can approve letting the RFP, and then in February being able to make a decision based on responses. Any questions there?
What did they say about what qualified as professional service?
It is gray. We went through several scenarios, whether it's snow removal, whether it's lawn service, whether it's legal, whether it's insurance, any of those things. It's, I don't know how to say it other than it's gray. As long as, and what was explained, as long as there is open dialogue at a board meeting concerning a proposal, and I'll just go like the insurance route because we do that on a yearly basis. There's always open dialogue in a board meeting. It can be reviewed. That process suffices for what we would have to do.
I wonder if it isn't in the best interest of the district to go broader than that. I wonder if it isn't a good idea every couple years to solicit proposals for all of those things. And I guess I think of every 2 years because that's how often the board turns over. And, you know, I'll be the first one to admit I came on and it just kind of let ride whatever has come before. Apparently it works, and, you know, probably should have invested a little more time and energy looking at, okay, what do we have? When was the last time we bid this out? So as I've been thinking about it, just maybe every couple years, just make sure that we're getting the best price we can for the district. But I also want to balance that against the amount of work that goes into that. I don't know how many is on that list. You know, I think you've hit a few of them: legal services, snow removal, lawn care.
You could go into vehicle
Insurance.
maintenance. There's a lot of ways to go. And with all of those, I think I would recommend to the board that it would be an RFP instead of an RFQ, talking about proposals and services that can be provided instead of a hard price. Because when you get in, for example, with vehicle services or legal, if you're just putting a retainer on it to cover your bases, you're probably going to outpay what service you're actually getting, because they got to make sure that they get their dollars out of it. So proposals, I mean, it could be who can be most responsive. It could be who, you know, location could have something to do with it. There's a lot of ways to look at it. I'm comfortable doing, like I said, whatever the board wants to do. If we need to make a list and say every couple of years we're going to go through these and solicit responses, I'm okay with it.
Did KSB talk about a threshold for dollar amount, you know, for the size of the contract or expenditure?
They did. What's unclear is it typically comes in construction or building type processes, and that number I think is 108,000 when it comes to construction, which I realize deviates from like our insurance stuff, but my understanding was it was very specific, and it's pretty specific in our policy that it deals mostly with construction or federal funds, if there's a use of federal funds, unless there's direct board impact.
So my thought was that we would put a threshold of maybe 20 or 30 or 50,000 on a contract, and if it's less than that, then it's administratively handled. If it's that or more, then it would come before the board on this maybe 2-year schedule or something like that, and that might shorten down that list a little bit. Sure. I think that's what we were doing at some other governmental agencies that was helping out. So,
More than willing to do whatever you guys, however we want to handle this. I think we have some time. The most pressing one, I think, right now is that lawn service.
I would agree. A 2-year cycle is probably the best. In the insurance world, every year, if you do that every year, you're gonna lose carriers, just gonna, interest, right? You're gonna wanna look at it because all you're doing is,
Checking the box.
yeah, checking the box. Every 2 years, I think, is probably just in my world, it would make sense. For what I do, and I would say any professional service would make sense. I mean, but you're right, though, I would go with an RFP, because then you have a little more, you're not stuck with low bid.
Absolutely, and I think KSB should be able to put together sort of a process and some of the generic criteria that we would apply. As you're saying, this will not be low bid, it's gonna be best value, it's gonna be,
Lot of
connection to the
factors.
community, all of those things. Maybe we just consistently follow that criteria, and then we put in for each specific service, this is what we're looking for.
Sounds good.
Do you think it's best, and I guess we don't have to answer this tonight, but to do it for every professional service or every professional service that is X number of dollars and above?
I think a
Or
dollar
a
threshold.
Dollar-
makes sense.
a dollar
Same
threshold.
reasons.
I think part of the problem, though, is you don't always know. Who knows what legal services might be? 1 year it might be 5,000, 1 year it might be 75,000. And I think that's the hard part about that. Snow removal is probably the same thing. Some years, when we get 0 snow, other years, I don't know. But, so I think that's the only hard part in putting that threshold is, those are varied service on an as-needed basis.
I think the legal's the toughest one to bounce around,
Yeah.
because our last policy book was like a patchwork quilt. I mean, you had some from one firm, some from another, and sometimes they were somewhat contradictory, not really, they didn't flow very well together.
And we wouldn't want to bounce around, but I do think it's good to keep people honest, and they need to be competitive. Otherwise, there are other people out there. And I think the board, in the board, that's sort of the board's thing too, in decision-making. Are we sure we don't want the consistency, even if it's maybe a little bit more money? But that should be a decision that the board makes
In a discussion.
in a discussion.
Yeah, totally. I would agree.
And that's our duty to do what's best for the taxpayers and everyone, the school district, everybody involved, so I think it's smart to do that. For those legal services or any others that would fall under that, would we want to consider what like a couple of year rolling average would be? 1 year it's 3,000, the next year it's
Or-
35, and
Yeah, or with something like that, we could, because we don't pay a retainer, do we?
No.
So we could go on an hourly rate and just say, what's your hourly rate going to be? Most firms are going to be about the same, so then you look at the one with the best reputation or the most, attentive and reasonable for what we're going to use them for. The same thing could be with, I don't know, do we have to do a contract with a physician?
We don't physician, we have a trainer that is provided to us.
Okay. So, if we do have somebody like that, we can kind of do the same thing with some of those that are going to be more on an hourly rate basis. Just do that on a 2-year regardless of the minimum threshold.
Brandon, it might be worthwhile if you could just make a listing of what that universe looks like. I'm not sure I have my arms fully around all the things the school needs to engage professional services for. Just a list.
But there will be some that we can't touch. If I'm correct, on the teachers, the health insurance is something we cannot.
No.
Yeah.
As part of the negotiated agreement, it would be more, district professional services that most of what we've named, I've got some others on the list on my desk. I'll work on putting as comprehensive lists together as possible, and then you guys can just give me direction how we want to attack it.
And Mike, does it make some sense to shop that even every 5 years, just to make sure?
Well, but under the negotiated agreement, Blue Cross is the only carrier we can go to.
But we could negotiate that.
That's between the negotiation, we could allow,
WEA. Yeah, so,
And we have never bid, that is one service we have never bid.
okay,
So, I mean, we've had this conversation in years past, and it didn't get a very good reception from the union.
got it.
That's all I got. Okay. Nothing in communications that I saw, correct? Audience comments? Vernon? Anything? Anyone? Moving on. Board committee reports. Head Start had a meeting today. She's doing a good job getting going. We'll have another meeting in, I don't remember which month, it's February. Lots of family involvement. It's quite the room down there, so good times. Other committees?
Yeah, so we had the negotiations committee, but I've never been on this board to give a report on that before, so how much detail do you usually do at this point?
I would just don't talk numbers, talk about
Okay.
how the process went.
Yeah. Okay.
And
So
where we're at.
yeah, it was a good process. It came in with fairly speedy agreement on proposed terms, and so now we're just going to wait on the union to see if they approve their end of it. That should take place, I don't know when they're going to meet.
They'll meet before our January meeting. It'll be an action item in January, and we'll have full details then.
So we do have a tentative agreement pending that and the board approval. January is the time.
Yeah, if I could just add, we are so lucky with the teachers that we have here at Wahoo Public Schools. I mean, not only do they deliver the results that Josh was able to share, but they could not be more reasonable and willing to be fair and do what's best for the district. And that does not happen, I know, in a lot of places. So I just want to say we are really, really, really lucky. And for those who don't get to participate in those negotiations, I will tell you, our teachers, union reps, are top notch.
Buildings and ground, we met, actually good news for once, we met with Sam from Fisher Tracks last week. What was it? Tuesday? Wednesday. Good news is, we don't need to replace the track right now. It's not in dire straits. After him looking at the track, he determined that, Robert asked a question if, could you host districts here right now? Would you feel comfortable? And Sam said yes. They're cracked, but those are cracks due to the asphalt, not the foundation. He doesn't see a lot of this. Well, he doesn't see any of this. It's flat. So he says his suggestion would be is fill the cracks in for now. Get your ducks in a row more for the future, the next year or whatever. But he has nothing but he felt like it's got some life in it. So number one, we've done our job with Jeff Simons. He did a great job getting us there because we're still using it. And he said he's going to get us some numbers to just give us an idea of what it could look like. But it's not the dire strait we thought it would be 2 months ago. So that's good.
Where did we get the information? Because if I recall, a couple of months ago, we were saying, we don't even think we can use it for this track season. So how did we go from, we can't use it for this track season to actually we have a couple more years? Like, had we gotten feedback?
I would call it a second opinion. From a different track company, those were the comments that were shared.
So one told us that it was not usable and it was unsafe.
Potentially. He's saying it's at the end of its life. After this winter, it could be, with the frost and with all that, it could be not usable. Our second opinion came in, he does 120 of these a year. He's been doing this for 40 years and says, I see some cracks, but cracks are due to the overlay, not the foundation.
And I wasn't party to the first conversation, but in listening to this guy on, I think, Tuesday, he knew what he was talking about. I have a lot of confidence in what he said. So.
Did he indicate years, or at least we can get through this year, we could host a district you know, or whatever, but
He-
contract.
Yeah, I only asked him if we could get another year out of it, and he said yes, without question.
Without question,
So I don't know,
it-
maybe 2, maybe
Yeah.
3, I don't know, but.
he just said, if you're worried about not having a track, be able to use it after this year or even in the spring, don't worry about that. It made Robert feel really good because Robert's been asked to host districts. And that's always a great thing to have at your school. And so, yeah, he was a breath of fresh air. So it was actually walked away, I felt really good, like, wow, that's an expenditure we don't need to worry about right now.
So is the plan then to hold off? Fill in the
That'd
cracks,
be my recommendation.
basically?
That would be the building and grounds recommendation.
Would Fisher do the repairs?
He says we have 1 year left with our current contract with Jeff's company, so let them handle this year, and then after, if we go into another year, he told us the product we can buy at Menards that he uses in all his tracks, he says it's real,
Do it yourself.
do it yourself.
So this guy wasn't even trying to
No,
come up with a new business, he was just trying to.
I think
be
he's plenty
helpful.
busy, yeah.
That was great.
yeah, and I called,
Good thing you
I
did.
talked to a couple people that have used him, he says he's the best in the business, and so, you know, I don't know if Robert got any follow-up from Battle Creeks, I know he just did theirs, so I know Robert was gonna reach out to those guys, because he's just the one he just did, but I would assume that they're gonna have rave reviews about him. Nicest guy when he died.
That was awesome.
So,
Look, we could have a little board outing and run the Menards,
Yeah.
grab some patch and throw it on the track. Be fun, nice retreat.
Any other committee work?
American Civics, I would just propose that we open for public comment. We're required to open at least one board meeting in the year for public comment.
Yep.
So we would just do a separate public comment section now on American Civics. And if anybody would like to speak on that, they can.
Ted?
To be advertised?
And it's not on the agenda, so we,
You know, that specific, we're taking comments this one time a year, this
yeah,
one
because we
meeting a
can't
year.
open a public hearing without having it on the agenda.
Or didn't make it on.
They would be under committee reports.
We can do it in January.
We can do it.
yeah, let's do that.
Any other committee reports? Moving on to action items. 5.1, facility projects update.
Just real briefly there, I sent you the OAC notes this afternoon after our meeting, 5-week schedule. They're really happy with where they're at. The only hiccup right now is the fact that we got some rain last week and it delayed pouring the gym floor. So they're gonna move on to another space, pour concrete there, come back to it as they get roofing on and get it protected. He actually thinks it might work better in the sequencing, not doing that gym floor first and going somewhere else, just to have multiple areas working at one time. So that'd be the only thing I have there, other than the notes you guys have.
5.2, discuss, consider, and take any necessary action regarding personnel resignations and/or hirings. Brandon.
All right, we have received 3 letters of resignation. The first is from Barb Shanahan, high school business. She will be retiring at the end of the year. The second is Amy Birch. She is middle school special education. She, I think, plans to pursue some other opportunities. And the third is Jamie Spalding, or Jamie Evelyn. She also is going to pursue other options. Her kids are going to be going to school in Lincoln. Her husband works in Lincoln. They moved to Lincoln. She's struggling to be able to drive back up here. She loves it. If that weren't the case, she wouldn't leave, but she's going to pursue other opportunities as well. So she is media specialist. Those 3 resignations.
Do we accept resignations? Do we move to accept them? So I'd move to accept the resignations.
All 3?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Questions?
Hearing none, Chris?
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett.
Yes. 5.3, discuss, consider, and take any necessary action on the payroll balances owed to MCL for past pay applications.
As I sent out in our pre-board meeting synopsis, MCL's provided the burden rate that appears to be in line. We took payroll out of pay apps, I think it's 4, 5, and 6, for a total of $189,144.05. I want to make sure that we have board action to get them paid and so we can get up current.
Brandon, do you know what that number was? How much we actually withheld?
$189,144.05.
So that was at the old burden rate.
Yep.
So we should now be paying something less than 189, 144.05.
Okay, so what I would ask is change it to say in an amount not to exceed, and I can clarify with him, because we're also going to see a credit on the January pay app for the calculations from the old burden rate to the new burden rate.
For the ones we've already paid, was my understanding.
Right.
There'd be no reason for us to write them a check, only to have them write us a check back when we could get this number right now before we approve it.
And he did not send me that. I don't have that number on hand. I know that's the amount that we withheld. So if the board wants to approve an amount not to exceed, then I can get with Joe, clarify exactly what that number should be on the new burden rate, and then I will inform you guys exactly what it is once he's able to provide that.
Okay.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, can you share that math with me
Yeah.
when you get it?
Yep.
Other questions? Hearing no more questions, or motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve payroll amounts due to MCL up to a maximum of 189, 144.05 as reduced by the amount, the difference between the current burden rate reflected in this number and the correct burden rate.
Second that.
Further discussion? Hearing none, Chris?
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yep.
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
5.4, discuss, consider, and take any action on pay application number 8 from MCL for the current construction project. Brandon?
Okay, this pay app number 8, the amount's $1,015,297.68. It's been approved by BVH. It's been approved by Russ. Questions?
I have a couple questions. Does this pay app reflect the correct burden rate? Okay, so this, you do not need any credit?
No.
Second question, is Russ going through and making sure dollar for dollar he has an invoice that matches and everything that's being billed is permissible under the contract?
That's my understanding in every conversation I've had with him, that he goes through, because he was actually a little late getting through this pay app because of the thickness of the pay app, because he goes through page by page, line by line.
So on the things, some of the general conditions, things that they bill, they just type that into a cost report. They're not actually providing any backup that I can find.
Okay.
Is he requesting that from them?
I don't know, but I can ask.
And certainly we can wait and do that at the very end. I will tell you, that's thousands of pages. And it's really hard to catch up after 2 years. But a cost report isn't an invoice. And I think we specifically changed the contract to require more than a cost report.
I will find out.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve?
Brandon, do you have a total pay apps 1 to 8?
$8,575,037.48.
That's just MCL, right? That's not BBH?
That's just MCL pay apps. BVH and Teal. No, I don't have that broken out. BVH right now is at 2.5 million, just over 2.5 million. Their contract's 2.95. And then Teal, and I'm trying to think who else is over here. Johnson Controls, another 187,955.19.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve payout number 8 in the amount of $1,015,297.68.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, Chris?
Alex,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di.
Yes.
5.5, discuss, consider, and take any necessary action on improving add alternates as part of the current construction project with MCL.
Okay, so from the beginning, there were some add alternates that if there were money in the contract left, that we would add on and include as part of the project. MCL now has dates and budget numbers for the different items. You have a sheet in front of you, so I've broken it out by month that it's due. So the first 3 that we'll discuss tonight are bleachers, equipment, and renovation of existing admin, specifically mechanical. Below that is a number just for those 3 items. So that 582, 361 are those 3 added up. The next, which would need discussed in January, would be new walls in middle school, flooring base, et cetera, in the middle school, and then scoreboards. That has a monthly total. Then you've got the next 3 in March, another one in June. The last one, remodel sped staff middle school area. That's unknown with an unknown price. They don't have a date. They're still waiting on some numbers. I did not ask specifically on that one today because it wasn't pressing like the other ones were. If you look at the bottom, total budgeted number costs, so that would be every individual bulleted item comes out to 1.145 million. They have released 700,000 in contingency as of today to start addressing some of these add alternates. It's still holding, I want to say 1.5 or 1.6 million in contingency as we continue to move through the project. Over Christmas, they're going to come in and do some scanning, I don't know what it's called, but they're going to get up in the ceilings and they'll take actual shots of wiring, cabling, plumbing, electrical, all that business, so they have a better idea before they ever even tear into it what's going on. So they should be able to tighten their numbers up and release more of that contingency as we continue to go forward, as opposed to, you know, you're ripping down a concrete wall and you have no clue what's behind that and no way to find out. So I think the first 3 things that at least need discussed tonight would be the equipment, the bleachers, and renovation.
So I'll start out with the renovation of the existing admin. I spoke with Eric Sherman, who's doing the HVAC. I asked in his professional opinion, do you think that he said, needs to be updated? He said, no, it's newer, it's functional, it's good, it works well. It's easy. Colin says it's easy. I haven't talked to Colin, so I'm just going off of, maybe you can intervene. Colin says it's easy, it's not a pain for him, it works fine. So, you know, when the guy that's doing the work is telling me that he looked at more, we would be not wasting money, but using money we don't need to use, because it's newer, it's doing what it's supposed to do, and it ties in what we got. That sound fair?
Yeah, it's a separate system. It's independent of the issues we're having in the rest of the building. I think the controls part will better address it than having to gut it and redo, because it's accounting for mechanical, which is the heat pumps, the HVAC, it's accounting for electrical, and it's accounting for ceilings.
So a couple questions for you, Brandon. On this remodel sped staff middle school area, we started talking about that in January. What could possibly take a year to get pricing?
Can't answer that.
Can you pose that to MCL? And then on the bleachers and equipment in the new gym, I think when we originally talked about this, one of the things we talked about was making sure we could add those in the future. Just knowing where we were at budget-wise. Why would we have to have a decision by January 1st if we had originally suggested to them that we would not be doing that? We wanted the ability to do it 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, whenever that made sense for us. Why January 1st?
The date on it is for ordering and installation. There's nothing that says we have to do it January 1st. It just means when the building opens, those pieces would not be in there if a decision wasn't made.
Okay, so that gym can still be used for PE, all the things that we had planned to use it for, right?
No,
Why?
if you want the equipment in the gym, we're also using it for not just PE, for other activities, obviously practices, kids that practice in the morning. For basketball, we're getting them out of not having to practice 6. Gotta have hoops. Gotta have volleyball nets.
We weren't, I thought we had always planned on that. Like some limited, I thought we were gonna plan on that piece of it.
So what is programmed right now is 2 baskets. The additional equipment, that second line,
Okay.
that would be 4 additional baskets.
Okay.
That would be end mats, that would be a curtain divider, and that would
Volleyball.
be volleyball standards.
Okay, I didn't realize that. So if my math is right, then that's 6 basketball hoops?
That'd be a total of 6.
6,
just
we
like
get two's
gym
in
now.
the bid,
Okay.
it's additional 4, but we all know is you can't practice with 2 hoops, and if you don't have volleyball
Yeah.
nets, I mean,
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I know they had to put in some numbers just as placeholders, but that bleacher number seemed really high.
It's really high.
It seems that,
I talked to MCL today, and that number is probably, don't quote them on it, but he feels fairly confident that that number is probably closer to 230. When their numbers guy put a number in, he thinks he just took the highest number of the bids that they got to make sure they didn't exceed what they say they budget for. Does that make sense?
yeah.
So he's asked for some revised pricing from the specific vendor they go with through the bid process, and it's probably closer to that like 230, 240 range.
and Brandon, I'll ask you, because I actually had Robert Berry brought this up to me last week, ADA in our gym currently. He made it sound like we don't meet the requirements of amount of space for ADA. Is that,
I can't
Okay.
answer that definitively.
okay,
I just know that it seems like recently we've continued to run out of space for ADA accessibility. And that would be like wheelchairs on the
Yep.
floor to be able to view. I think we have 2 spots on the home bleacher side that can be utilized for ADA, and
Well,
we
we-
generally see more than that.
we put him on the end zone on the court of play. And so he knows, I was just, that was something that came to my mind when I was thinking about ADA, is that whatever that includes will have ample, whatever that, the bleachers, whatever,
It would be to code. I don't know that our gym is to code. I don't know that it's not to code
okay.
currently.
But whatever we do moving forward,
Would be to code.
okay.
Well, just as I look at that, we haven't gotten into the riskiest part of this project, which is remodel. Even though they've given us $700,000 under the contract, we have to give it back if something comes up that causes us to exceed the contract amount. I think on top of that, I think over time, we've all agreed something needs to be done in the middle school. I'm really bothered by the fact that there is this unknown, so we can't sort of evaluate it all relative to each other. I don't know if that number is $100,000 or $400,000. And that is definitely disappointing that MCL, you know, we said before we could evaluate any of these, we needed numbers for all of them. You know, the other thing that I guess I just step back and think about is we've talked about a track and a field. We've talked about potentially needing to buy ground so we don't lose our ability to expand years down the road. We don't have to use all this money. Just because we have it doesn't mean we need to use it. And frankly, with what's coming up, it may be smart not to use some of it, because I don't know where those dollars come from if we're really truly pushed into either buy this ground or you are now landlocked and you've got nowhere to grow. And not knowing what that track and field may cost us, and we just don't know what we don't know. And so I guess I struggle with that without having a complete picture of what we're talking about here. Two, a little bit of information on what that track and football field may cost us. And three, some more information. Mike, have you heard anything on that ground? Has there been any further discussions on being pushed to make a decision?
My last conversation with Larry was, he wants the school to have it, his number hasn't changed. He would work with us over a time period, but I don't think we've got any farther than that, because I just think it hasn't worked out. And number two is, we got money. I mean, we got a school to build first. And so, back to what you were talking about contingencies, I would agree with that. I mean, I was just thinking about $700,000 this morning with the release. I mean, what happens if, like you said, they dig into this project and they realize that we've spent it? Where are we going to get it?
And that's not to say we won't be in a position to get bleachers. Maybe we can't have it when the school opens, but that was sort of the entire discussion was, let's see how this project plays out.
But I would agree. I would say though, the equipment
I agree.
is 100% we have to do. I don't think that's not about sport. That's not.
Yeah,
It's
no.
about what's best for the kids.
You bet. And being able to utilize that as a space for physical education and practice and all of those things that we currently just don't have the room for.
You know, one thing I would bring up, and I think I've talked to a couple of members about it, is even if at the end of the day we don't do the bleachers right away. Okay, just say that. We understand we're going to have to do something in there at some point because of the amount of activities we have going on in our school. We just can't put lawn chairs in there. So my thought would be, and I think I've talked to Brandon about it, is we need some other numbers too. What's 6 rows of bleachers going to cost? What are 8 rows going to cost? I mean, those are things that we can be looking at too. And then, like we say, is we have a foundation and we have an organization that wants to be a part of something big. This might be the thing they can be a part of. Because we're going to have to pay for, like, you know, obviously we talk about in February scoreboards and new gym. Well, that's a standard scoreboard. If you want to have a freshman, junior high, JV game or whatever in there, you got to have scoreboards. It's not one we have to have. But like I said, back to there, like you just said, we've got a budget of 1.1 is what we, of all these things, and we have 700,000 released.
Well, I'd move to approve only the equipment in the new gym at this point, and put the others on hold for now.
A second thought.
Do we have any idea with NCL about what's their thoughts about additional funds that are sitting there that, you know, they release 700? Are they feel? I mean,
His comment to me was they would not release it unless they felt confident in doing so. He felt that
and I can go look at the exact number, but let's call it 1.5 million that they're holding contingency now, is sufficient for anything they anticipate going forward. Well recognizing you get into reno, different things happen, there's possibilities, but he said he wouldn't release it if he didn't feel confident in it.
What's the, I'm sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, do we know exactly what the lead time on bleachers is?
I don't off the top of my head. I could find out in pretty short order, but I don't.
Apparently about 8 months.
Well, I think it's worth asking that question, because again, maybe we can get a little bit farther down the road, see what happens here, get some numbers for that sped staff middle school area, and then maybe the picture becomes more clear, and, you know, we're not 3 years out, maybe we're just 6 months out, if all of that makes sense in light of all of the things that we're facing in terms of potential capital outlays.
Right, and what these dates mean are just to be in place when the building opens. I asked him specifically today, let's say it's a perfect world, we can get everything we want and there's still money left over to address some of the things that we actually left off our list. He said, yeah, we can still do that, we'll just leave it open, we won't close out the construction process, and we'll figure out what those things are. So you could wait on these things, just knowing it's not going to be there to begin with, but it could still be done before we're done with the project.
And that was kind of my question, is that, is there, and this is just a question for all of us and potentially for MCL, is there concern, if we don't approve it right now, bleachers or some form of seating in there, do we miss out on the opportunity for them to start running some electrical, you know, stuff like that if we wait too long? But I think you kind of answered this, is so it's ready the day it opens. We'll just say August 1st for argumentative sakes. But if we find out some more of these answers and we come back in February and say, okay, if we get 10 rows of bleachers at $250 today, you know, 3 years ago that 10 rows of bleachers cost $200,000. I don't know, I'm just making a number.
My recommendation would be look further ahead than August. If we know that's something that's going to happen at some point in time, I would encourage us to tell MCL, BBH to rough in whatever they've got to rough in. Whether that be bleachers, scoreboards, internet connections, whatever it is. I think taking the time to do it now and paying a little up front is going to be much more advantageous than trying to do it on the back end.
That was what I was wondering, if we missed the boat on that now. We need to make sure it's all in place to potentially do it whenever.
But they should be doing that anyway, because we told them at some point we would be adding, like, so why wouldn't you do that?
Right. Specifically, I think it comes, the conversation that they had today was the scoreboard conversation, because I had shared that, you know, they have, their budget item is for a standard run-of-the-mill scoreboard. Lots of schools you see putting in digital scoreboards with advertising and all that business. And they said it would take a different rough in for that type of scoreboard. So if that's something we see in the future, we'd want to direct them to do that work up front. Otherwise, we would just have the standard scoreboard, and that's what it would remain until we did the work on the back end.
I would tell them they're doing both. I mean, have the network cable there. Have the ability to do it, so if we end up doing that at some point from fundraiser or whatever, somebody donates it, we're not having to spend a bunch of money to have it rewired. So I'm just speaking for me, but I'd want to have it ready.
Right, now is the time you have to do it. It will not be never, it's just a question of timing. And you have to build it as if all these things are going in at some point in the future.
Yeah, no different than the gym with the bleachers, having it all set up, no different than the Wi-Fi, no different than having the wire, the speaker wire, whatever a sound system is going to be. Prepare for it for that down the road or whenever it can get done. Just don't wait, and after we're done with the building, we got to have them go back in. So yeah, I would say Brandon, take the lead on that and get it all up.
Okay. And I would be in favor of bleachers in the gym today if we would get a number that was closer to what it's actually gonna cost, even though I'm not gonna hold them to it, we'll just say the 250,000 compared to 358, that makes me feel a lot better looking at the budgeted numbers and potential other add-ons. So if we can move that down the list and get a closer.
As I get updates, I'll update.
Yeah, no, but my fear is, and I no doubt that you would do that, my fear is that we're not getting updates. We aren't,
Right.
we would approve, say we would approve that right now, we're gonna pay $358,000 when it actually costs $250, or potentially could cost $250. Boy, that looks silly. And are we getting, are there other instances where things like that happen?
What's it cost plus? They have to prove out their costs.
Yeah.
So there's no way for
Okay.
them to
Yeah,
hide.
yeah.
You know, they could put 16 million for bleachers,
But they have to prove it.
they'd have to provide us.
Provide us,
invoices.
Yeah,
That's the
okay.
benefit of the
And
cost
if we
plus.
can get an updated realistic cost and put that in February or March, and I feel much better about that.
And we need to have the remodel on the sped.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
I
yep,
can't, I
yep.
would agree with Renee, why we don't have that doesn't make a lot of sense.
And sorry to keep jumping all over the board, because I know there was a motion. This is in line, but not regarding the motion. There was at one point, new walls in the middle school, there was talk, I believe, that teachers weren't in favor of some form. Okay, so
Some of the teachers,
Okay.
I'm still trying to work through that. Some of them appreciate the ability to
Open
open
up.
it up, and some of them do not like the lack of soundproofing that come with mobile walls. I don't know quite how to address that.
So either we do it all, or we don't do it, or we get new bifolds, or what? that are-
Still working through
Okay,
that.
okay.
sounds like that's a superintendent recommendation.
Yeah, good.
Maybe even if we could move away from like a dusty rose.
And Brandon, lighting, and it's not till March, aren't those lights newer? LEDs in there?
Right.
So what lighting controls in current gym?
I think it has specifically to do with the controls, because right now it's a panel box on the wall that is kind of frowned upon with code.
But it's grandfathered in, right?
Right. We don't have to do it.
Okay,
That's why it's an add-on.
we've done it for 40 years, I
Right.
think nothing's gone wrong, so I don't know why all of a sudden.
Who decided what went on this alternates list?
It was based on information from the board and the committee.
What committee?
Yeah.
The one that I was on?
The construction committee, yeah.
Huh.
Is there something missing that should be
No,
on there?
I don't remember talking about lighting in there, that's why I was,
Yeah, there's a lot, I
Well-
don't remember talking about renovating the existing, I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff on
Yeah.
here that came from somebody else.
The lighting was a brief conversation. I do remember this piece of it. It was a brief conversation that they said they could do it, they didn't have to do it. And it was kind of like, okay, put it on there and we'll see.
so which restrooms are we talking about?
That I need clarification on. I
Yeah,
don't
'cause I
have
don't-
an answer.
I don't ever remember.
I think that is an ADA entrance
Okay.
thing. I just don't know which restrooms it is.
So we can look at moving any of this down. I mean, even any of these items could get moved down the road.
I think once we have a number, as Renee said, on the sped remodel, because I think that has to be done, I think that's not more of a want, that's a true need. I think once we have that number, that could obviously change how we look at some of the other things, but but having the unknown, and then like you said, the lighting controls on some of them things, like, wow, to me, I don't think that's anything we need to really get worried, too excited about. That's just me, though. So we have a motion?
Any other discussion? Questions?
And so, okay, one last thing, on this motion, what's it including all again, just so I understand, it's a divider, 4 hoops, nets and hardware, obviously, for everything with that, and then.
In mats.
And mats, that's okay.
Chris?
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett.
Yep. 5.6, discuss, consider, and take any necessary action on the purchase of appliances for the elementary kitchen. Brandon.
Have some pieces in the elementary kitchen that are lightly functioning or do not function. Cohen's been down there to do everything he can. I got some bids on different pieces. The recommendation here is a industry acceptable, code acceptable dishwasher in the amount of $25,981.76, convection oven $12,793, and a heating rack for $47,87.15. There were several different options here that Cohen and Angie went through. Angie's our director of nutrition. None of them are the highest end, but they do suffice for what the kitchen needs.
Do you know how much life we got out of what was in there?
A lot.
Do you know how many years? I'm just
Is
curious.
it original, Chris?
Yeah,
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
since it was built.
20-some years.
Oh, wow. That's really good.
Yeah.
And is this within a budget? I mean,
This will come directly out of our nutrition fund, which we have to spend some money out of to, as odd as it sounds, we carry too much money in the nutrition fund, so they make us spend it down, so we're going to spend it down this way instead of some other. Because they make us spend it down, but then they also require that we increase meal prices X cents per year. So, trying to thread a needle.
And the funds in there are sufficient to cover 100% of this?
Any other discussion? Motion to approve?
We need 3 motions?
Or just
It'll be lumped into one.
It can be lumped into one.
I make a motion to approve the purchase of a dishwasher in the amount of $25,981.76, a convection oven in the amount of $12,793, and the heating rack in the amount of $4,787.15.
I'll second that. Second that.
further discussion? Chris?
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Bob,
yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
5.7, discuss, consider, and take any necessary action on the disposition of the oldest cargo van in the district fleet of vehicles. Brandon.
We have a cargo van that is kind of used for parts at this point. If it runs, it doesn't run very well. It's rusted out. I have no clue how long we've had it. As long as I've been here, I think it sits there for the most part. It's the old white van with the state of Nebraska and the Wahoo star on it. By policy 3019, anytime we are getting rid of stuff or selling stuff, it's got to come before the board. I would just ask that you approve the disposal via sale or scrap, and it's probably going to be scrap because that's what we're going to get out of it.
It's been a long time. That's
think
been a fixture. We should almost make a monument.
I think you should auction it off the next Booster Club event.
I think you might be surprised. You might. The warrior wagon.
Does the new entrance to this school need a rock?
An impediment?
Yeah.
You can cut up the top, throw some dirt in, plant
Mr.
some
Lewis might make it into art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd make a motion to dispose of that as you see fit.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. Chris?
Alex,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Brett,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Di,
Yes.
5.8, discuss, consider, and take any necessary action on a revised superintendent evaluation instrument. Brandon.
I've attached the draft from last meeting. I think it was shared with anybody, or everybody. I don't know if anybody had comments, but I'll turn it over to you guys.
Which one?
If anybody has any questions about any of them, let's just kind of go through it, talk about them item by item.
So can you help me understand the color coding, the highlighted stuff? What does that represent?
Pretty.
What's that? Yeah, it makes it prettier.
Makes it professional.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
are.
And blue on the back.
Yeah, blue is, I think the blue is more commentary, and the yellow was stuff that we proposed adding, that wasn't in there. And I don't, is there green as well, or is there just yellow and
Yes,
blue?
there was a green.
There's a green.
I don't have that on my,
I think green was added to the evaluation that Marcia provided to us.
okay.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So the blue is just commentary. I think the green was basically stuff that all three of us on the committee agreed should be added. The yellow was, you know, suggested, but maybe not necessarily unanimous, you know, agreement from all three committee members, if I remember correctly. So that basically the blue would not go in the new policy, it would just be for purposes of discussion and illumination tonight.
So should we just start from the top here? This very first highlighted under the defined budget process.
Yes.
So I'm not sure I'm tracking what all this yellow is. That particular category is developing. And by developing, it means one step below proficient. So how does this relate to that? I don't understand.
Yeah, I guess I think I'm the one that typed that in there. I would consider that something that wouldn't begin immediately, it'd be something that we would have to work on to make sure that we had a process set up in the budget.
Is this basically the goal of what we're shooting for?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, but that's not a standard by which he's judged, right? I mean, in terms of, I'm not sure that fits.
It would be a standard because we would expect that process to begin if we have it in here. Is that something that we're working toward, to have that in place within a year or two?
Oh, so then that would be a performance indicator.
Yeah,
So that should go over in the performance indicator
it
column.
could be, yeah. Yeah, I don't think I paid really close attention. I was
Oh,
making
okay.
notes more than anything else.
That makes more sense.
I did like how it was set up in separate sections, so you kind of know what should be happening in specific months.
Yeah.
So it gives some sort of a target guideline. My first question was on 4A. Provide proper supervision, evaluation of local school district administrators, ensure administrators, certified and classified staff members receive an appropriate evaluation, and annually report to the board when completed. As far as, my question would be, how in-depth can that be? As per, can it just be evaluations are done?
It has to be.
Yeah,
So
we
that's
can.
what I was getting at.
Yeah.
So it said an annually, not an annual report, but annually report.
There you go.
To the board.
Yeah, and then I would think that if anybody has any questions specifically, then there'd be discussion on it. But if nobody has any questions, then reporting would be basically a check the box.
And 4C, annual board generated survey of parents and educators, like something, who would, that was.
We kind of brought that up. It's, I'm just saying, I'm not saying ask me necessarily. How do I phrase this? My thought would be, being as a board, it gives us an opportunity as board members to send out our own survey from us, asking questions. We may want to know, that we think we, as a member of the District 39, or how do you feel the school is from a cultural standpoint, or it gives us an opportunity as a board, since we're the one being elected and being voted by the taxpayer, our patrons, an opportunity to do a survey that we do, that we all are individuals, it gives everyone an opportunity, if they have questions they want to put together to our District 39 families. Does that make sense?
Here's my only concern on
Okay.
that. If you're gonna send out a survey, it needs to be validated, which means you have to ensure that the questions are written properly and they're validated. I would not be sending out an unvalidated survey.
We'd have to validate it, but it'd be questions that we would have for our patrons.
Right.
Because that is a comment you hear from our own patrons is, what do you guys think? What are your concerns? As a board, what do you think our concerns are? Well, I don't know, maybe if we had a survey that could allow people to, we could get a feel I use culture because culture is a big thing everywhere. How do you, as a taxpayer or a family of District 39, how do you feel the culture of our school is? And what if it comes back surprisingly not good?
I'm gonna jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you anticipate this being something different than the surveys that are sent to parents from Josh?
Well, it won't be as many questions. I just foresee it being a separate, and maybe I'm way off the charts on this, but again, I just feel it gives us as a board, as each individual, an opportunity that has concerns or questions to their patrons, without having a way for everyone to fill it out, and you can get results back, and it gives you an idea of, for example, my question might be, how do you feel as a district our school lunches are, your kids' school lunches are? You get feedback, either A, that was phenomenal, it's great, or it's not good. So we got, go ahead.
Josh, I assume you validate all questions before they get included in a survey. And by validate, I mean a third party validates that the question is written appropriately, understandable, you can gather the, meaningful data, all of those things that a third party does. Is that fair to say?
That would be accurate for the survey that we're currently using, the survey that we're now, oh my goodness, October-ish, that we it might have been actually November, that we just got that information back, so that will be shared at an upcoming board meeting. But all of those questions are, yes, checked for validity, reliability. We don't want leading questions that would point someone in a direction to answer a certain way, or we also would not want questions that would lead people to believe that there's something that maybe isn't, those types of things do occur through the system that's set. We can add questions, we can add our own questions to those surveys as well.
Do they validate those for us?
We, over time, they would be able to check that, but I think until
Who's the third party that would validate it?
Test it against large samples, that would be challenging to do that.
Do they have like a bank of questions?
They
where
do.
you could ask something about the school lunch program from their validated set
Those
of
would
questions?
be things that they would have. It's the panorama survey that we approved back in.
So they would have, if that was a question that I would like to see on a survey, they could validate, that's how they would.
They do have a bank of questions that other alternative types of surveys that we could look at. Like if that's something that you would like, at least to get some information to look at, we can do that.
And Mike, the main reason I'm asking, I don't feel qualified to put together a survey that we would distribute it to the.
Again, that's fine, you don't, but there's 6 of us, and if Di says there could be questions on that validation list that she would like to have put in there.
Yeah, I think that's great if we could incorporate certain topics and then he could go and find us some questions as opposed to us just writing our own wholesale survey with unvalidated questions.
Totally, I'm not saying that's
That's my
by no
concern.
means is, but I still think having some personal validation on some questions that we may have ourselves is a good thing.
Yeah, I think if we could my preference would be to include it in what we're doing so people aren't getting a bunch of surveys. Like, let's cover all the issues that we think that need to be asked.
The only other piece that and just so that you consider this, is the general, is whether it's a school community input piece that you're looking at, or if it's a community, larger community input piece. I think because our surveys that we send are very targeted to our school families. So that would be the only other consideration. Who are you collecting? Who would you want to collect information from? And then again, what's the value in that?
Is there any cost to the current surveys that we do? There would be a cost if we went outside of
I
our.
don't believe that there's any fees that we are.
No, it's through that grant right now.
Yeah.
But if we wanted to ask more than just our families, and they're sending their kids to this school district, then there would be a cost, wouldn't there?
I would have to check on that, I'm not certain. We do have the ability within that, but if you, again, I don't know if if you would enlist like some sort of a NAS, like a school board, like I imagine that there's other types of surveys available, culture-based or whatnot that you can look at.
Josh, other than the annual stakeholder report, how many different types of formal and informal communication with stakeholders do you use, other than the big report that goes everywhere?
In terms of just communicating with the public, I mean, the Facebook, all of those types of things, Facebook. In terms of formal reports, I try to put something together like the AQuest report that went out, and then also when we have all the financial information, we'll send out the community report, which unfortunately is always about 6 months behind, but we don't have all of the information initially. If the board would rather go a direction, I can certainly release the majority of that information, and then we would just amend it as the other information becomes, if that's a concern or consideration. But those are the two big pieces. And then I would say another prime way is our participation in various philanthropic groups or charitable groups like Kiwanis or Lions Club or whatnot, which we have opportunities to communicate with other folks who maybe don't have children who have.
My question was derived from the fact that we do share a lot of information already, both formal and informal, through various groups and streams.
The only thing that stood out for me in this particular section, I think it's covered a little bit in 4A. It talks about the supervision and evaluation of administrators and ensuring the same for staff. The one piece I didn't see here was sort of responsibility for their growth and development and setting goals. And this is really just more, you would hope that would be part of evaluation, but certainly it doesn't have to be. It can be one of those generic rank 1 to 5 and you never set any goals and you never measure development against goals. And so it felt like it was missing the development, setting expectations piece of that. I just could not find that in this survey, and that was really the only thing that stood out to me. Or not survey, I'm sorry, this evaluation tool.
In standard 1A it does talk about 1A, there's information to analyze data to shape a mission, vision, and goals with high measurable expectations for staff and students. I guess that would be where I think that would be the goal setting.
I think that's part of the mission vision goals, so that's the purpose of this, is mission vision. With high mission, it could be though, maybe. those are communicated. I just had gotten the
Yeah,
impression
you're
that was a
looking
broader,
for more in
an individual, on an
individual
individualized basis.
review.
Yeah. And maybe it's in here, you know, that's how, when I do this, that's how I'll be evaluating. I always want to be clear on what our expectations are. You know, I think that's something that we owe to Brandon, to be very clear, here's what we expect from you, and here's how we're going to be measuring your performance. And I think that the administrators and then the teachers below that all deserve very, you know, clarity and goals and evaluation against goals.
So going back to 4C, maybe to reword that would be including questions that the board wants to include in the surveys that go out, instead of a board-generated survey.
To piggyback on something that's already going out.
Yeah. So
I would agree with
instead of saying that including an annual board-generated survey of parents and educators, it'd be including questions that the board wishes to include in the surveys going out.
I like
too.
that.
Easy edit.
Or just that would qualify in versus proficiency and accomplished.
So any other questions on specific sections there, suggested changes?
Are you making those other changes?
Well, if necessary, yes.
Okay, that yellow, the one that we just,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Good.
We need to approve this. Does this need to be approved tonight?
I think
Did we
if we're going to
decide?
be using it going forward, the sooner we approve it, the better. Give Brandon direction, I think.
Yes.
The goal was to approve it tonight and then have my evaluation in January,
Gotcha.
is what we discussed last month.
Because after we approve it, then we send it off to get.
Yeah.
Once it gets approved,
Yeah.
I just send it to NDE to be filed
Certified there.
and send it back to NASB, because then they will help organize the responses.
And all that being said, to use this to retroactively review the superintendent is not going to be productive. and fruitful.
No.
So it's better to get it approved sooner so he can start working toward these things for next, would it be next January would be your next review? Or did we move that to March or something?
No, it would just be by that date. In the past, NASB recommends, I think, superintendent evaluations in December,
Okay, right.
going out in November. It's up to you guys when that happens.
That would be fine.
Yeah, so this isn't terribly time sensitive, so if we want to,
I
table it for another month, we can, but we could also approve it and then amend it a month down the road.
And I think every amendment, though, has to then be approved by NASB.
Yeah, I think so.
Certified.
Certified, sorry.
At the NDE.
Is it NDE?
I think so, isn't it?
So all the evaluations have to go to NDE and put on file. NASB provides a template for us, and then they're going to help put the responses together for you guys, but they don't have to, they just take what you give them.
D is going to be retroactive anyway. It would be awful to approve, administer, see how the process goes, and then provide, and then amend next time.
I don't think there would be any serious problem with that. I think we could approve
Just
it.
a question,
Yeah.
and I'd like to see that done. I'm just asking.
Because I expect that if there's
It's gonna be
something
so
on.
different than the
They're
last
gonna
one.
come back,
Yeah.
they're gonna come back and tell us anyways.
Yeah, I think if there's something really out of line on here, they're gonna say, we recommend different language, we would then approve that amendment and use that as a template going forward. At least this would get something in front of them.
Is that actually true? Do they actually look at it for substance at all? I got the impression they basically put it on file, stamp it certified without any substantive review.
I'm guessing Marcia, if we asked, will you look through this and give us some feedback, she would do that.
Oh, that might be great.
Yeah, I think the board, the department head just basically puts it in the file and stamps, and says this is the one all the public schools using.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because she didn't
So that-
say validate, approve, she just said certified.
Yeah.
Just that this is the one we are using
Fine.
currently.
Yeah.
And to your point, maybe we just try it, see how it works.
Well, that's,
It's certainly better than what we have now.
well, it's a lot more in depth. It's a new process because
Yeah.
a third party is gonna formulate data or compile the data anyway. It's totally different. It'll just kind of be a test run. Gives us some good feedback. Hopefully we can build on some goals. Well, start some goals. Hopefully we can build on them. But at least the fact is that it's a pretty much new process. So if we approve, fill it, get it compiled, and then we can make changes before next November. We need to get it done by September so we can send it and then it's back and then we'll send it in November.
So we're sort of talking about you like you're not in the room, given that this is your evaluation. Do you have thoughts on this versus the tool that we're using now?
Yes. I think this is a step in the right direction, because I feel like the tool that we've used in the past is very qualitative, subjective, and without much direction. I'm not sure the descriptors are descriptive enough in order to give valuable feedback, and while there's space for narrative, there's rarely narrative that's added to very many pieces, and there's no goal set. I mean, we get to the end of it, and like, you may say I need to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z, and I'm reporting to 6 individuals as opposed to the one collective that it's intended to be. I think setting expectation, having goals is going to be much clearer here, and if it's written down and I know what I'm supposed to do, if I can't do that, that's a problem. If it's assumed I'm supposed to do things and I'm not aware of that, it's a lot harder to meet those expectations, like our current tool.
And this is better, at least for a trial run
Yeah,
here?
I think this is better. I hope it's taken with a grain of salt, just because some of these things are obvious, straightforward, should be done up front. Some of these things are gonna be new, it's gonna be new processes, understanding that I haven't done those, we haven't done those. It's gonna be an opportunity for growth as opposed to punitive, you're not doing sections 1A and 4B, so hit the road type thing.
So is there a motion to approve the superintendent evaluation as presented?
And just to clarify, do we want it approved like this? Do we want it approved like this, subject to maybe one final review from
Marcia?
Marcia?
It'd probably be better, if we're gonna have Marcia look it over, I would say we table this for a month, see if she can get back to us with any suggestions. We consider her comments, maybe we modify it, maybe we don't, but then we look to really put this into place in January.
Are we too late at that point?
Not by policy.
I'm good with that.
Well, I'd move to table it 1 month and then,
Have her look this over.
yeah.
Okay, I second that.
And then, like, there are ones on here that says combined with D, combined with F. We would combine those, shoot that off to her.
Yeah.
Say,
And or since she's the author, maybe we just send it to her with this and say,
you sort of get the gist of what we're trying to accomplish, could you help us massage that in a way that it fits? Because I think this is her whole structure. and
I would imagine
language.
turnaround time would be quick, because everybody else is already
Yeah.
done this across the state for the most part. So she should just be sitting there and waiting for work. So, it's good.
You want me to send it or you to send it?
Tell them where she's at.
I think you can send it.
Yeah.
You just send it off to her, because I don't ever contact.
Just like it is, or do you want to amend anything?
I'll amend that
Okay.
one section for C.
Send me whatever you get cleaned up. and I'll
So
send
you're
you.
gonna send it to Brandon now?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I do think the blue comments, or the blue highlighted was the rationale for what we were
Yeah.
adding. I don't know if you want to take that.
I'd probably take that
Take it
off
out,
too.
take it
Yeah,
out.
that was for discussion
Or
here.
more
so
for
it's
us,
discussion.
for
Yeah,
us,
look at it, send it to Brandon, Brandon will forward it, could be ready to roll in January.
Okay.
So do we need a motion to table something? Items for next regular meeting, public comment for American
Civics.
Yeah, got that on there. We'll take action on the superintendent evaluation.
Updated ad alternates with middle school areas, as well as I would try to get a more accurate number for bleachers.
Inspect.
Yeah, that's what it's, middle school.
RFP for lawn service.
Board elections.
Yeah.
Oh,
Board-
yeah.
Board reorganization because it's January. Marcia said, maybe a January template.
Okay.
I'll send it to you again.
Will you be able to
Oh,
get
hang on.
feedback or a recommendation on the walls for the middle school by that?
It's not going to be consensus anywhere.
Will you be able to get a will you be able to provide a recommendation?
I will try.
No, Mr. K, have Mr. K handle that.
Because the other thing to think about on this, and for me to get clarification on, the way this is all planned out, both first and second floors are now middle
Middle
schools.
school.
That's how they're looking at it. So it's the separating walls downstairs and upstairs. It's the wall coverings. Carpeting down here isn't the issue, it's only upstairs, but this has become the middle school as far as the planning
Yeah.
purposes. Sure.
Is that something that has to be done, or is more advantageous to be done now, since we have people here, or is that something that we can grow into in the next 2 years or 3 years?
What do you mean?
That we could add those walls later.
I would prefer, I think it's cheaper, it would get more expensive, I'd rather do it now and be done, it's part of the project.
And frankly, if
We
we're
don't- we
bringing
don't get-
fifth graders up
Yeah.
and that space is so tired, it's time. If we're gonna have an entirely brand new wing and then just say, nah, let's just leave that 40 years old.
Brandon, could you also get, you may mention that whatever that remaining contingency is, 1.5.
Yep.
It would make me feel more comfortable, and they say that they don't feel, they feel comfortable with that number. I would feel more comfortable just hearing that one more time as we can continue to consider ad alternates, that we're not gonna say, oh, shoot, now that number's 1.8, we need 300,000 from this stuff.
When are they doing that infrared and all that above the ceilings and all that?
Christmas break.
Because that's gonna be a big one.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna find out a lot of things about what's up there.
They're gonna do it next week.
Okay. One last thing, do a lot of school districts have food, like a food, not a czar, but a food, over the whole program from K through 12?
Districts our size,
Yeah.
like a director of school
Director
nutrition.
of nutrition, like for the whole,
I would say yes, districts of our size.
and I'm not knocking our
Right.
staff at all, I'm just telling you.
Right,
We're not eating, and we have kids that are growing, and my kids who are not the finickiest kids at all are sometimes taking second lunch, and I'm not blaming the staff. I'm trying to wrap my brain around what has changed in 20 years or even 10 years that they don't want to eat anymore? I mean, I was talking to my nephew Dale when he was younger, obviously. He talked about the days where he couldn't wait for lunch. At one point in my life, you would have probably said I should have not ate so much lunch. But I love school lunch. And I feel like our kids are not getting enough to eat. And that's a huge deal. And I think if that's something we need to address as a board to figure out a situation, or if we need to hire somebody that needs to be to oversee the whole program to help everybody, I'm all in on that.
I think we've been talking about
We have.
this in excess of a year, and I haven't heard any meaningful steps that have been taken to improve it. So can you identify any meaningful steps that have been taken to improve it?
Trainings offered, I'm not 100% sure they're taken advantage of because they're in the summer, but informative trainings all the time have offered days off to go visit other schools to see what they're doing with Experience Lunch. I cannot comment whether that's happened or not because I've given names, but it could be done on days when we don't have school and I wouldn't know any differently. I've had multiple conversations about, I understand that there are guidelines in place and things that we have to follow, but our kids need fed, whether that's offering seconds, whether that's offering a la carte item, whatever it is, just make sure that the kids are getting fed however we need to make that happen. I'm going to say part of the issue is staffing, keeping people in there. We get people, they may or may not stay. Finding the most efficient way to serve in the kitchen is something that we've got to look at. There's several factors that we're trying to address.
So just out of curiosity, I hear a lot of asks. I don't hear a lot of expectations and accountability.
Yep.
Should we still be asking?
That is a fair question. I forgot how to do this. That is a fair question that I would be more than happy to answer one-on-one.
Okay, that's fair. Here's my other question for you. From a staffing perspective, it seems like that would impact the speed at which our kids get lunch, maybe whether lunch is hot or a little on the cold side. That doesn't seem like that would impact the menu, the portion sizes, the taste, right? So I guess I'm just struggling with that from I understand staffing impacts some things. It doesn't seem like that would impact what's on the menu and how it's going to taste once it's cooked.
That's a fair question. I think preparation comes into play with that as well. Again, not making excuses for the kitchen, not doing any of that, but I think the entire process, if not staffed appropriately, is going to lag.
I mean, to me, it looks like we've got basically two buildings. One kind of does it their one way, it's not uniform. Having somebody to oversee the program that's qualified who does this. I know, again, that's more money, but I also think it's money well spent when the quality is the same throughout the building and they're able to, whoever the staff is working on, I'm not blaming them. They don't go to culinary school. I'm not blaming them one bit. I'm just saying that if we had somebody, some way to oversee everything and has the expertise to show them how to do it the right way, turn something into this, the next day you can use it again. I just think we would be so much better with our kids eating. Because it's not, you're here, Vernon, you're here, I mean, you're here, you guys see it all, the elements show that. It's not everybody's always gonna like what you're gonna get. But there are certain things that I know in my lifetime that's never gonna change. Spaghetti's always been good. And if those are things kids will eat, let's make it more often.
Right.
And if pizza's something they like, let's make more of it.
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit concerning to me that we've been talking about this for a year. I haven't heard where we have made any meaningful improvements, and I'm not sure I've heard a plan to make meaningful improvements. And I think food impacts behavior, food impacts learning. And those are two critical things for us as a school. So I think we have to address the food problem. And I think we cannot keep talking about it without any meaningful action.
Have you ever looked at a contractor to come in and run the food service for us?
Discussed it, not looked at it.
Might be something to look at. I know of other schools that have done that, feel like it's a financially wise move, and the quality then is a little easier to demand than from your own staff, because they got to keep their contract.
And maybe that removes some pressure off some of ours because of the short staffing, right? I mean, there's only so many hours in a day. To your point, this isn't about blame or judgment.
No, it's
This
not.
is about we've identified an opportunity for improvement, and we need to act on that. And I think that's a great idea. If it's a contractor, even putting together the menu for a whole school year and helping take some of that burden off the limited staff that we have, that would seem to be, especially if we've got money in that nutrition fund, which it sounds like we do. So maybe deploying it in that way.
Is there a lot of revolving in the kitchen stuff? You're one day on another here.
Yes.
So it's tough to get consistency. when you're-
Is one better than the other? Is the elementary turnover just like the high school, or is it vice? Is it?
Right now, it's not a turnover issue, it's a consistency issue day by day. And Chris, if you got anything, as far as staffing, we've had essentially the same kitchen staff at least the second quarter, correct?
Right, but we also have 2 cooks at the elementary where normally we've had 3.
Okay.
We've increased our student population, but have not increased our lunch staff.
Gotcha.
Plus, you have staff that have, issues at home where they need to sometimes leave, and then that puts a burden on the other staff members that are here. I mean, there's days where admin and teachers have gone in to help serve because we don't have enough staff. And as far as a nutrition contract, that takes a year. We looked into that when we were looking at hires. It takes a year to get started. It's not something you can call up tomorrow and say, hey, we want someone to come in and run our nutrition program. It takes a year.
Tell me why it takes a year.
I don't know, it's what the state told
Okay,
us.
that's my point.
Yeah.
I'm not.
No,
interested.
I think it's just getting everything.
I know, but
more-
they're saying a year, is that really a
Yeah.
year, or is that just their way of saying it's a year? It's a.
We've even asked the state to come and help, show us what we can do, show us what needs to be done.
I guess my opinion would be, the first question is called the school districts, of what size they have something like that, and how does it run? And if it runs well, maybe there are a third-party contractor to do some of it. I just know it is a problem at all levels.
I think that, yeah, if we open the planning and maybe even the ordering, well, you can take those 2 off somebody's plate, that might be a huge lift.
And staffing.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Do we want to carry on that conversation in January, add it to the agenda?
Give us a month. I think so.
What do we want to call
But
it?
add it to add what to the exact,
Discussion.
Just discussion.
just a discussion.
Just discussion.
Maybe check around with some other schools and see who they're using for contractors, and see who might be willing to
Okay.
give us some bids.
Anything else for next meeting, for this meeting? Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Second, anyone?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Good job, Jim.
Thanks, guys.
It's the game tomorrow night, Ashland's new gym.
Josh, can you cut the feed, please, since the meeting's over?